Hello.
Hello. Oh, hello.
The year was 2347. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Union for 60 years, and in that time they had learned one universal truth. Not all wounds are visible. Deep within the Verdant Station, an ancient orbital habitat overgrown with alien flora, there lived a child unlike any other. Her name was Seraphveil, a Zyorian princess with pale green skin, long silver-white hair, and eyes the color of deep ocean twilight. She wore a simple dark plum dress, barefoot always, as if the cold stone floors grounded her to something real. For 12 years, Seraphveil had not spoken a single word. Not to the tall golden-robed Zyorian handmaidens who watched over her in silence. Not to the diplomats who traveled light years to earn her trust. Not to the healers, the telepaths, or the elder council who believed her silence was a curse placed on the royal bloodline. She simply watched, absorbed, remembered everything, and said nothing. The handmaidens stood like statues in the overgrown corridor halls, their teal skin glowing faintly under the station's filtered light. They never pushed her, never demanded. They had learned long ago that pressure only made Seraphveil retreat deeper into herself, like a tide pulling away from the shore. The botanists who tended the station's wild gardens were the only ones she allowed near her. She would crouch beside the exotic flowers, red blooms with silver veins, violet clusters that hummed in certain frequencies, and press her small fingers against the petals as if listening to something no one else could hear. The Galactic Union called her condition selective dimensional withdrawal. Her people called it grief. Because 12 years ago, Seraphveil had witnessed something no child should ever see. Chapter 2. The Human Who Didn't Try. His name was Dr. Callan Marsh, a human xenobotanist from New Dublin, Earth. 34 years old, with dark hair threaded with early grey, and the kind of quiet patience that came not from training but from loss. He had lost his younger sister to illness when he was 20, and something in him had never fully recovered. He understood silence. He respected it. Callan had been assigned to Verdant Station not as a therapist or diplomat. He was there simply to catalogue the rare plant species growing in the station's abandoned industrial corridors, a galaxy-funded botanical survey, nothing more. He didn't know about the princess on his first day. He was crouched low between two enormous fern-like alien plants, sketching their root structures in a worn notebook, when he heard the softest sound, the brush of bare feet on broken stone. He looked up slowly, the way you look at a wild animal you don't want to frighten. Seraphveil stood 10 feet away, staring at him with those deep, unreadable eyes. Callan didn't stand up, didn't speak. He simply looked at her for a moment, then looked back down at his notebook and continued sketching. She didn't run. The handmaidens at the far end of the corridor tensed, hands folded, watching with careful golden eyes. They had seen dozens of well-meaning people approach the princess with wide smiles and open arms. Every single one of them had failed. But this human did nothing. He simply drew his plants and hummed very softly to himself, an old earth melody, something his mother used to sing. Seraphveil took one step closer, then another. She crouched down across from him, mirroring his posture exactly, and stared at the sketch in his notebook. Callan tilted the notebook slightly so she could see better. He pointed to the plant beside them, then to his drawing. An explanation without words. Conversation without pressure. For the first time in 12 years, Seraphveil smiled. Chapter 3. The Language of Roots. Over the following weeks, Callan returned to the same corridor every morning. He never sought her out. He never waited for her. He simply came to do his work, and she came to watch. Gradually, the distance between them shrank. She began sitting beside him, close enough that her silver hair would fall forward when she leaned over his notebook. He started leaving small sketches for her, detailed drawings of the flowers she touched most often. She collected them, pressing them carefully between flat stones near the garden wall. The handmaidens whispered among themselves in the old Zyorian tongue. Something was happening that their healers and elder councils had failed to produce in a decade. Connection. Real, unhurried, undemanding connection. One morning, Callan was examining a red-veined bloom when it suddenly wilted in his hands, a rare phenomenon he hadn't seen before. He frowned, made a small sound of concern, and reached for his notebook. A small green hand touched his. He looked up. Seraphveil was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Part sadness, part understanding. She reached past him and gently cupped the wilted flower in both hands. Then she closed her eyes. The flower bloomed again. Callan sat very still. He had read about Zyorian empathic abilities. The royal bloodline carried a rare gift of emotional resonance with living things. But reading about it and witnessing it were entirely different experiences. His eyes filled without warning, and he looked away quickly, blinking. He heard a sound he had never heard before on Verdant Station. Voice. Careful. Like the first note of a song remembered after long years of forgetting. It was afraid, Seraphveil said. Callan turned back to her slowly. She was still looking at the flower, not at him. The flower, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, the words shaped with careful precision. It was afraid of being forgotten. So I reminded it that it was still seen. The corridor was completely silent. Somewhere behind them, one of the golden-robed handmaidens pressed a hand over her mouth. Callan looked at the girl beside him, this child who had carried 12 years of grief and silence alone, and he said the only thing that felt true. I know that feeling, he said quietly. I know it very well. Chapter 4. What silence taught them both. After that morning, Seraphveil spoke every day. Not in floods, not the rush of a dam breaking, but steadily, carefully, the way a river finds its path through stone. She told Callan about the day she had stopped speaking, the day her mother, the queen, had died in a political collapse that the elder council had tried to hide from her. She had been 4 years old, standing in a corridor not unlike this one, and the silence had felt safer than a world full of voices that lied. Callan listened without interrupting, without offering solutions. He simply stayed. He told her about his sister, about the way grief could hollow a person out so thoroughly that they forgot what their own voice sounded like from the inside. Seraphveil listened with the full, absolute attention of someone who had spent 12 years doing nothing but observing the world. You didn't try to fix me, she said one afternoon, as they sat among the blooming alien flowers. You weren't broken, Callan replied simply. You were waiting. She looked at him for a long moment, those deep ocean eyes steady and unafraid. What was I waiting for? He thought about it honestly, the way he thought about everything. Someone who understood, he said, that silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes it's the fullest thing in the room. The station hummed around them. The flowers swayed in recycled air. The handmaidens stood at their quiet posts, and for the first time in 12 years, none of them looked afraid. Seraphveil reached over and placed her small green hand over his, the same gesture she had used to stop him from mourning a wilted flower. Thank you, she said, for not leaving when I gave you nothing. Callan smiled, the gentle, tired smile of someone who had also spent too long believing he had nothing worth giving. You gave me everything, he said quietly. You just didn't know it yet. And in the overgrown heart of Verdant Station, surrounded by alien blooms and ancient stone, two people who had both forgotten how to speak found their voices again, in the one place neither of them had expected. In the silence between words. In the language of simply being seen. End.